Welcome back to Base Hit Trading. If you're new here, this channel is about my journey as a beginner day trader trying to build a small account. The goal is relatively aggressive. I'm aiming to grow this account by 7% every single week. So how's that going? Well, last week, I managed to grind out a 2.5% gain. It wasn't the full 7%, but it was green. But today, I gave it all back. I shrank the account by 2.63% this morning, and that wipes out all of last week's progress and puts me slightly in the hole. A huge portion of why that happened is because this is finals week, and I've also in the middle of moving dorms, and a lot of other variables were at play. So realistically, I probably shouldn't have taken any trades this morning at all, but this is where we're at. With that said, let's get into today's trade. Today, I actually took two trades, but they were both on the same stock, that being CETX. There were a few stocks fighting for my attention, and one of those is the stock you see on the screen now. But, I don't know if you can see that, but all those topping tails in the shooting star pattern and the MACD crossover told me that this was not a safe place to buy. So I didn't, thankfully, because after that, it did actually happen to tank. Here is where I took my first trade of the day, and it did end up being a winner, but it was a very small winner. So I could see here CETX started curling up, and it has a lot of volume, and it had just gotten a pretty good headline. So I decided to enter a small position of 7 shares at $6.20 each. And I ended up getting pretty spooked. I could have sold for a lot more, but I just got scared. I'm just going to let this play out for a second so that you can see what happened. So I ended up selling basically right as it started to turn around, which was good. But the bad thing, you can see right here I decided to punch out, and boom, 80-cent profit, which should have been higher. But anyway, I later decided to do this. Right around here is when I thought, oh, this is probably a bull flag pattern, and I decided to get in on it. It was not a bull flag pattern. So I started doing a bunch of weird things in this trade. So right out the gate, I was in with all of my buying power, and it didn't go my way. Right out the gate, I was scared. And I just kind of watched like a deer in the headlights. And at one point I was actually up a few bucks, and then I was down, and then I was up. But I'm glad I sold when I did, and you're about to see why. Eventually what I did here was I set a take profit just barely above my buy-in in hopes that it would just go up and tap it, and then I'd be out and I'd be green and it'd be whatever. But eventually over time I thankfully realized that that's not the way it was gonna go, and I punched out, and you'll see here I cancel my take profit, and then I punch out, and just when I hit the sell order, it was at $3 when I sold, and then it dropped down to $4, and then it really started plummeting. So I'm at least glad that I sold when I did, but honestly, that was not a horrible trade in my opinion. I don't think I broke any egregious rules. I think some of those dojis should have kept me from using all my buying power, but ultimately I'm not terribly upset with the way this performed. I didn't destroy my account. I didn't hold too long. I just made a bad trade, and that happens. So that puts me back to where I started last week, but it's not a game changer. It'll be fine. I'll crawl back out. I've had days where I've made 3% in one day. I've had days where I've lost 2.5% in one day. I've had days where I've lost substantially more than that, but guess we'll see what happens tomorrow.